Today, what I'd like to do is share the Pelican Institute's priorities for the upcoming legislative session, have some discussion around big picture, what we hope to accomplish in the next few years, and then, of course, take any questions and discussion that you may have. So, again, to begin with, as John mentioned in his kind introduction, the Pelican Institute is Louisiana's free market think tank. So our job is to research, study, follow the data, and make recommendations to the legislature, to the governor, to citizens of Louisiana about what policies best advance individual flourishing. So if you read our mission, it's that every person in Louisiana should have the opportunity to flourish, that we remove barriers to opportunity, that we create pathways to work and opportunity, so that Louisiana is a place that you can live, work, raise a family, start a business, follow really at its heart the American dream. And that is where we stand today, opposite of that in many ways. Louisiana, as you may know, is the third highest outmigration state in the country. We're losing our kids and grandkids at a rapid pace, and that's something that we believe very strongly needs to be reversed. And the good news is it can be reversed. We're not a landlocked state in the middle of nowhere with no natural resources or no way to dig ourselves out of this. Our contention is we've gotten here because of roughly 100 years of largely bad policy decisions, which means it may not happen overnight, but by making good policy decisions, we can turn the tide around. Look at our assets. 5 of the top 15 ports in the country, some of the most active natural gas sector of any place in the country, some of the most oil refineries of any place in the country, ready and inexpensive access to land and water and energy, not to mention the mouth of the Mississippi River right here in our state. There's just no reason with these assets that any state, frankly, any country would love to have, that we shouldn't be at the top of the list for opportunity and prosperity. And so we've got to really take a focused look at, we believe, transformational change over the next several years to address those challenges and to create, again, a policy environment that allows everyone to flourish. So today I want to focus on just a few of our very most important priorities. Of course, we have been and will continue to be working actively with lawmakers, with the governor's team, and with leaders all across the state. Over the last year, you may have seen our campaign. We called it Our Louisiana Comeback. It was a statewide campaign. We visited 52 parishes and gave speeches in all of those parishes. If anyone knows a civic group in Tensaw Parish who's looking for a speaker, please let me know. We've got a few more to get to. But all across the state, barnstorming, as well as a digital campaign, radio, all across the board to really set the stage for what we believe we have the opportunity now. And our message was, it's time to write Louisiana's comeback story. It's time to make bold, transformational changes that allow us to do that. And we have our first opportunity here this year. And at the top of that list, the top priority for the Pelican Institute this year will be education freedom and the opportunity to advance universal education scholarship accounts for every child so that state dollars follow the child to the school of their choice. We believe fundamentally education is critical to opportunity and prosperity, and the way we must deliver that is to allow every child in Louisiana access to a school that best fits him or her. Now, I have 4 kids at home, 4 kids who grew up under the same house with the same parents, and the striking thing as we lived through the lockdowns and were very responsible for the first time, at least as older kids, for their education. Of course, we always have a responsibility for their education. But when we were just there to deliver it, like most parents and grandparents across the country, what was so striking is how differently they all learn. I had one that was up at 7 o'clock every morning. He would plow through his schoolwork, and then it took him about 2 hours, and he played basketball outside the rest of the day. I had another that I had to drag kicking and screaming just to do her worksheets and get through the day. And I'm absolutely convinced after living through that when you are required to help a kindergartner sit through a Zoom class, that is the very reason that God gave us bourbon. So we made it through that well. But ESAs are a policy we have seen proven across the country. A number of states, 10 or 11, I believe now, have made advancements to enact universal education scholarship accounts. And this is really the disruption in the system that's necessary. I'll give one final example on this. I always share this with crowds when we speak. The very first compulsory public education law in America, the law, the structure on which basically our entire traditional public education system has been built, was passed in the 1600s, and its stated purpose in Massachusetts, the stated purpose was to prevent young women from becoming witches. And you can understand that in the context of the time, but I would argue certainly our education system has much greater needs and demands than just that right now, and maybe we could debate how well it's even doing that, but that's a conversation for a different time. It's time for an opportunity for every child to have that access, every child to follow those pathways, and every child to allow those dollars to follow them to that opportunity. I believe this will be a major priority of both the governor and the legislature as we gavel into our regular session in March, and certainly it's the thing that we are most passionate about as we head into that. Now, the second thing we talked about on our Louisiana Comeback campaign as one of the two critical areas, we talked about universal education freedom, and we talked about phasing out the personal income tax, and really getting into some significant and structural tax reform here in Louisiana. Now, of course, that doesn't happen until the fiscal session in 2025, but that doesn't mean the work doesn't start. The only way we are going to tackle our tax challenges is by first tackling our budget challenges. We have spent and spent and spent. The state budget over the last 10 years has grown 88%. Now, I don't know about you, my household budget has not grown 88%, and I suspect most business, small business entrepreneurs and household budgets haven't either. And yet, we have continued to spend money at a rate that's absolutely unsustainable. Now, it's true, there's some good things that have happened on this too. The paying down of debt last year that the legislature did, and I see we have Representative Freiberg here, I know worked very hard on this. That has already produced results. If you look at the projections today, paying down that retirement debt is saving us nearly $100 million in the current fiscal year projection. Imagine the impact of the long-term budget by even putting more resources toward paying down that debt early. But the truth is we can't continue to spend at the rate we've been spending. If we ever have hope of eliminating the income tax, of being competitive, that requires fiscal restraint. And that means a stronger expenditure limit and better policies in the state budget. Now, an expenditure limit that works would look something like this. We believe that government spending should grow at a rate of inflation and population. So if the population is growing, of course, it makes sense. There's more services to be provided, and ideally, anyway, more taxpayers picking up the bill. And so it would make sense to grow government in that way. Inflation, of course, is a part of our society. We've felt it very hard in the last couple of years. But before that, pre-COVID, as you recall, inflation was relatively flat, at least compared to historical levels. So we lived in a period over the last decade with relatively flat inflation and unfortunately outmigration. Our population has actually dropped in that period of time, and yet the state budget grew by 88%. If only we had constrained the growth of government in some formula like that grew at the rate of inflation and population, we could have been over halfway through phasing out our personal income tax. The income tax brings in about $4.5 billion a year. 8 years ago, it brought in about $3.5 billion a year. But we've taken in all this money and we just continue to spend it. We've got to get to budget reform so that we can make this state an environment that's friendly to entrepreneurs and friendly to our kids and grandkids that we're paying to put through school who are leaving us to go to Texas and Tennessee and Florida. We've got to have an environment that will, again, back to that mission statement, allow every Louisianan the opportunity to flourish. Now, flourishing also requires that we have opportunity and that we really address poverty and people who are at the lowest rungs of our economic ladder. This is absolutely essential. And one thing that the Pelican Institute has worked on for a number of years, will continue to be a priority this year, is the issue of occupational licensure. Now, occupational licensure, if you've never had to actually deal with it, may seem like a minor nuisance or maybe even a public good for the people of Louisiana. Surely, it's protecting public safety and health. Well, the fact of the matter is Louisiana is one of the most onerously licensed states in the country. We require more licenses for low and moderate income professions than any other state in the country and have the 6th highest burden overall. Now, the good news is a couple years ago, the legislature did take some action. They passed a bill carried by Representative Amy Freeman from New Orleans that sets in standard these rules that the licensure boards promulgate that says they have to meet a public health, safety, or welfare obligation. And it, for the first time, allowed individuals to actually challenge those regulations in court when necessary. We have represented several of those individuals, a veterinarian, a dentist, and several others who have been challenging not the license itself necessarily, but the rules that are underneath that license that make it hard for individuals to have those jobs and keep those jobs. Now, we are asking the legislature to take an even further step, and this is something nearly half of the states in the country have done, and we call it universal recognition. What it means is if you are already licensed in another state and in good standing, we're going to fast track your license right here in Louisiana. I'll give a story. This may seem common sense, and yet it's not done right now. I was speaking to a gentleman who is from Louisiana. He lives in Atlanta. He is a plumber by trade and a minister as well during the day. And he's in fact a master plumber in Georgia. His family was having some health issues and he wanted to come home to his family. So he called the plumbers board and said, "I'd like to come home." And they said, "That's great. We need more plumbers here in Louisiana," which we do, by the way. And they said, "You know what? That'll be great. And here's the way it's going to work. You're going to start back as an apprentice. You're going to start over through the process." He said, "Well, but I'm a master plumber. I've got that certification. I'm in good standing. I don't have any complaints against me." And they said, "Well, those are the rules." These are the decisions that these boards and commissions are making, and we have to give those pathways. We need skilled workers in our state. We need people to come back. If our goal, as the governor has stated, is to bring Louisiana kids home, right? "Come home, Louisiana," as I recall, was the theme of his inauguration. This is a way to do that. We've addressed this already in the state for spouses of military members and spouses of first responders, but it's time for everyone to have that opportunity to come, to earn a living, and to really pursue the American dream here. Now, related to this and related to the budget is an issue of government efficiency and consolidation and better coordination between agencies. We've seen executive orders from the governor now in a couple of areas, and one place that we hope to see even more of this is in our workforce and safety net programs. As you may be following, the United States Congress is pursuing the reauthorization of a program called WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Currently, that bill, the program unbelievably prohibits safety net programs to work in coordination with the workforce programs. Now, what we know about poverty, what we know about safety nets is they're intended to be a temporary solution to help people get back on their feet. But the truth is, in America, as my friend puts it well, we have made poverty survivable, but not escapable. And part of that is because we disincentivize work and family formation in our safety net programs, and because these programs exist in a series of vacuums, not speaking or coordinating with one another. So again, as the governor and the legislature look at opportunities to provide government services better in a way that help people succeed and help people get back to work, help people flourish, we know that work in particular, along with family formation, are two of the things that have the best chance of helping people get out of poverty. And those are the things that tend to be disincentivized within our system. So we're calling on the state, and we'll have more to say about this Certainly in the months and years to come, the legislature has already taken, and Representative Freiberg really has been leading this effort to really bring these programs together. The legislative auditor has done a wonderful job providing all of us data about how these programs could work better. And we believe there's opportunity in the coming years to bring these together and really provide opportunity for every Louisianan. So, of course, there'll be much more in the legislative session. I do want to touch on crime because I suspect this will also come up in the questions. Of course, next week, the legislature will come together to discuss a series of solutions to crime. And so we've been working closely with some legislators, talking with, well, anyone who will listen, but certainly the governor's team and others. And here's our broad advice. First, follow the data. If we don't have policies that are based on experience and data, but rather are knee-jerk reactions, we're going to end up in a place that we've been before. Louisiana, our high crime rate is not new. We have been at the top of the list. These are the bad lists. We never get to be top of a good list, but we're going to get there. We've been at high crime rates for decades. And some of the proposals on the table, we'll see what the bills are, we'll see where they end up. We fear will bring us back to the same old ways of doing things. And the reality is, right, if you remember the quote often attributed to Albert Einstein, definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The truth is we know from the data what works, what public safety projects or programs work. And look, we all want safer communities. Every one of us at some point has been touched by crime, almost certainly, whether it's us directly or a friend or family. And our communities are plagued by it if we don't take bold action to really focus on two things. One, better data and transparency in the system so that we can make better and faster decisions. And the second is really focused on outcomes of our reentry programs. 95% plus of people who are going into incarceration are going to come back into our communities. The question is, what awaits them when they get back? Is it no job, no family, no ID, no opportunity, and return to a life of crime? Or is it training, connectivity, engagement with the community, and ready to get back to work and get back into those communities? Those are the questions we face. The state has already done a lot to focus back on reentry. We need more and better outcomes data so we know what's working and what's not. We need more and better transparency to figure out what programs are actually leading to the best outcomes and best opportunity. Finally, I'll mention sentencing. This will be a big topic, certainly of the special session debate and likely the follow-up. I suspect there'll be a lot of discussion on crime in the regular session as well. In Louisiana, we have some of the wildest sentencing laws in America. You have crimes that are very similar that have very different penalties. We have no streamlined system. And while this isn't in the call for the special session, we hope the legislature will really take up streamlining, organizing our sentencing system so that it's fair and transparent to everyone, to the victims and victims' families who deserve to know when offenders are coming out and in what state, to certainly to law enforcement, to the state, and to the offenders themselves. We hear stories all the time about them knowing their release dates before the law enforcement does. So we've got to do all of that while we're supporting our law enforcement, putting more and better trained law enforcement officers on the street so that we can all work together to create a safer community here in Louisiana. So there's some big things to do. They were talking about big transformational changes in the next coming years, and we hope we can provide the intellectual ammunition, the research, the data to back all these up. You can find most of our proposals in our Louisiana Comeback Agenda, which you'll find on pelicanpolicy.org, and we'll be rolling out more in detailed information as bills get introduced and as the legislature does its work. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to present some of our priorities today, and I'd be happy to take and answer any questions. Our message at the Press Club today is that it's time for big transformational reforms. Our legislative priorities include universal education freedom or education scholarship accounts, budget constraints so that we can get to real tax reform, and a significant look at those barriers to opportunity, things like occupational licensure and the complexity of our safety net system.
You mentioned education reform. Elaborate on that.
So education, of course, is an impact on everything. If we get good, educated kids, they have better jobs, we create more opportunity, and for too long our system has been failing us. So we believe that, and that's, by the way, despite the amazing, great work of teachers and administrators everywhere, it's the system that's broken. So we believe that dollars should follow every child in Louisiana to school that fits them best, and that we should really have this disruption in the system that has proven successful in lots of other states to improve student outcomes, to improve parental engagement, and to make sure we have a system that works for everyone.
What do you see as the key priorities in this legislative session, the special and the regular?
Well, in the special session, we hope that as they debate crime, they look at data and evidence-based solutions that also provide more transparency and more data to the public. Certainly overall, education scholarship accounts are our #1 priority, and getting the state budget under control so that we can get to real tax reform.
How can people get more information?
You can find out more about the Pelican Institute by going to pelicanpolicy.org, or you can follow us on any of your social media venues, and we'd love to have folks engaged in the conversation.